Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. You are on Iron Radio. This is Phil Stevens. I am a powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, strength coach, and coach of many youth sports.
My name is Dr. Mike Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet certification, which opens again January 15th, 2024 until January 22nd. So shameless plug, go to flexdiet.com.
This is Coach Durrell out of Strength Guild in Kansas City. Gym owner, strength and conditioning coach, and a weightlifting coach.
And this is Lonnie Lowry. I am not a coach. I'm a nutritionist, professor of a couple of decades, former competitive bodybuilder, and consultant for academia and the food industry. Okay. I have one piece of news and one bit of listener mail from a longtime listener. It'll make you guys smile, I think, just what he says. But this one I want to get Mike's input on, especially. And you know what? I don't want to spoil it in advance, but science is reductionist. Let's remember that as we go into this, okay? Here's the headline. This is written by Savannah Logan from Lab Roots. Light color may not affect sleep as much as previously thought. New research published in Nature Human Behavior suggests that light color may not be as important as previously thought for controlling humans' circadian rhythms. In the study, 16 healthy volunteers were exposed to blue light or yellow light for 1 hour in the late evening hours, about 30 minutes after their usual bedtime. They were also exposed to white light for 1 hour at the same time on different days as a control. So it looks like they get blue, yellow, or white. After light exposure, participants were monitored to see whether their internal clocks had shifted when exposed to different colors of light. Additionally, they were monitored for how long it took them to fall asleep after each light exposure and how deep their sleep was early in the night. The next day, they were tested on their reaction ability and asked about their tiredness. Results showed that there were no significant effects of the participants' sleep or their internal clocks based on the color of light to which they were exposed before bed. This result contradicts previous research in mice, and it basically instead suggests that it is light-sensitive ganglion cells in the eyes that play a more important role in regulating circadian rhythms and sleep timing. In other words, light exposure before bed can still negatively impact sleep, but the color may not be that important. What do you think, Mike, based on the,
Yeah, was that just a single night, or did they do this for multiple nights?
This is just a skim off the top of a recent Lab Roots report. So
yeah,
I only have the information that I read, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things I would wonder about is one of the things that people forget is that, and I just talked to a cardiologist about this the other day too on my podcast, which will be out in a while, that the intensity of the light matters a lot too. So if you're blasting yourself with like super high lumen red light right before bed, yeah, red is, not blue. It's probably in one of the better spectrums for the evening, but just that sheer intensity may be enough to alter those circadian rhythms too. So I'd be curious to see what the intensity of light was, and if it was high enough, did it just kind of wreck all their sleep, to the same degree. Right? So I think of intensity first, like color, probably a more distant second. And I'd be curious to see if it was just the one night or not. So one thing I have noticed with myself and clients is if you get pretty good sunlight exposure, especially when it's sunny, maybe not Minnesota in the winter right now, you can kind of leave more overhead lights on that are, moderate intensity in the evening, and I don't notice that it messes up too many people's sleep. I also do a lot of sleep analysis for the guys over at Rapid Health, so we do that on everyone that comes through using Aura. But if you're limited on outside light exposure, people tend to be a lot more sensitive to that. And then the last part too is I've had some people for many years now wear kind of the orange colored glasses in the evening. I'm not sure why, even independent of that, just anecdotally, some people seem to be very sensitive to it and other people not nearly as sensitive. So I think just kind of like like with sleep. Like if you're doing most things right most of the time, and you have one night where you don't get a lot of sleep, you're probably okay, right? I think there's probably an accumulated effect here too, which would be interesting. But yeah, I'll definitely have to give the study a read for sure.
Yeah, I mean, pulling the original paper is not something I did this time. I was just remiss, but you're right. It'd be interesting to look at individual variability. Like, is it all over the place? Because, like with nutrients and drugs and everything else, that's always a thing. What struck me right away was they're like the interventions versus control are light, or light. Like there's no different dark.
Yeah.
There's no dim.
That's why I wondered if it wrecked all of their sleep.
They did say, let's see here. It says basically they're kind of busting on the idea of all this, your screen reddener on your computers, all the stuff that used to be F.Lux, and then Microsoft just sort of co-opted it and all that. It says, while night shift mode on electronics may be useful since it reduces short wavelength proportions of the light produced, the yellow or red tone is an unnecessary byproduct that could be eliminated in future models. So I guess they're just, to me, it's common sense. Like, yeah, the intensity of the light's going to be a thing, right? The blue light that wakes you up, it's because the sun rises and, you get blasted with a lot of intensity. And yeah, maybe it's more blue shifted than in the evening, where it's dim and the sky is red. That all just kind of makes sense in a way to me. But I'm still going to appreciate a dimmer, redder screen, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a nature human behavior, if anybody wants to look. And I got this through Science Daily. But yeah, I think we need to be careful over concluding with this kind of science journalism. Because when I mentioned science being reductionist, what's the control? The control was white light. Well, how about no light? Don't look at the screen at all, or look at a little phone farther away from your face than a giant 99-inch TV screen or something. I don't know.
I just picture this type of study. And again, like we're talking about, it doesn't mean the study is necessarily bad. You always just have to pick what are you comparing stuff to, but it's going to be limited to those comparisons. So I can just imagine people online who don't like to use dimmer lights or wear nerdy looking glasses at night and make fun of biohackers and be like, oh, see, all this shit doesn't matter at all. Look at this study. Right. This study says so.
Right. So I just thought that was interesting. Like photobiology, it's a real thing,
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and I have one thing from Dave Fryers. He says, I thought you guys might be interested in the following from chemistryworld.com. Subscriber to the site, so I've copied the text here, and I'm not going to read through all of it. There's a lot of it, and I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the general concept. So, David, I apologize for not doing the deep dive and reading all of this, but here's the gist. Studies suggest that our fruit and vegetables are losing nutrients. Barbara Pinho examines the evidence and looks at the implications of a quote-unquote nutrient collapse. And they start off by talking about, in 1843, John Bennett Laws did some longitudinal work, as I understand it. His aim was to look at the effects of different mineral fertilizers and organic manures on the yield quality and, that sort of thing of major British crops like wheat and barley. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. I know that they asked a dietitian later in the article, and my thought is I don't see the USDA, like their Food Data Central is somewhere that I've used for years, both in industry and on my own. You want to know what's in a food? Go look at Food Data Central from the USDA, that is. I don't see them just changing the numbers for what's in an apple, or what's in a serving of shredded wheat cereal. I just don't see them doing that, but it is an interesting idea. I mean, you hear all the time about topsoil erosion and weird chemical fertilizers or insecticides or whatever. What are your thoughts on this? Phil, I know you do a lot of stuff, like you avoid a lot of commercial stuff. Do you think there's some truth in this? Do you think it's a problem, like this whole nutrient collapse and you're just not getting the micronutrients from your fruits and veg?
I have zero proof. I'll start with that. I have zero scientific proof in front of me. But I mean, it makes sense on multiple levels just with big ag farming. And I mean, you understand it. we have 80 bazillion people we need to feed, and we have to figure out a way to do it. And, they try and combat that with crop rotation and everything else. I mean, it is fact that, like, certain plants use certain nutrients and put off certain nutrients, things like that. Mm-hmm. So let's say you plant 100 acres of fucking corn. Of course, that corn, because that's all that's on that 100 acres, is going to strip the field of those specific nutrients. And then couple that with, the engineering that's gone on to make plants grow bigger, faster, this and that. I mean, one would expect that an apple that grows 7 times faster than an apple that used to could potentially have less stuff. If it goes from nothing to a ripe fruit in 90 days, whereas the other one took a year. And then taste. Like, the only real logical explanation I have, if I take a homegrown heirloom tomato here and I eat it and I go to the store and buy one, there's a giant difference.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But, I mean, yeah, so I think it's potentially definitely possible. I mean, do I have any proof? No. But, I mean, I hang my hat on, like, a lot of my food. We try to source our food as close to home as we can. And part of that is just we like it. It's like having our hands in our own existence type of thing. I know what my animals have eaten. I know what my vegetables have eaten, and what has been sprayed on them, what hasn't. So, yeah, I mean, talking to farmers and stuff, like, yeah, we have to rotate or they're screwed. There's a reason they'll rotate from corn to beans to this to this. It's either that or they just inundate the soil with what's missing now because it has stripped the soil. So
it's a good point. When I drive around here in Ohio, there's corn everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And oh my God, it grows so close together now. It's not like I remember as a kid. The stalks look like they're 2 inches apart. And when you think about what that's drawn out of the soil, when the crop yield is that much more dense, it does make you wonder about some of this. And again, to be fair, I would suggest people, Google for it. It sounds like this is from chemistryworld.com and not everybody can get that. It's behind a paywall. I'm not too concerned that there's a quote unquote nutrient collapse, but I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, because of the technology that's involved, how dense the things are grown, or how quickly they're grown, just the sheer amount of people. I remember Sagan talking about how, 95% of the human population is alive because of modern agriculture. Mm-hmm. And ag is its own field. I am not an ag person. When I went up and competed actually in Fargo, North Dakota, like that campus, like it felt like half of it was ag, agriculture buildings. So it's a whole field, and I don't want to abuse that. People just go look. But I was just looking for opinions, I guess, as well. Like, do you think there's less in food? I can't operate from this. Well, there's nothing in there. You can't. How do you use MyFitnessPal and know what you got going on there if you just like, well, this is all a lie. None of this is really in here anymore.
I mean, I think our bigger problem, if we get it down to brass tacks, if you're going to the store and you're buying single ingredient items like tomatoes, peppers, meat, blah, blah, that's a lot smaller problem than what the vast majority of the population is eating, which is prepackaged Stouffer lasagna.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Highly processed, yeah.
Yeah, just the processed bullshit. Let's get down to it. Like, the world would be a better place, in my opinion, if people just bought food, and things like that. And I mean, like, I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo advancements in, vegetable growth and fruit growth and things like that. We would not have bananas and almonds and shit as we know them now.
No.
Without changes, like, it's not all bad. I mean, look at lumber. Look at the lumber industry. I have an old house built before 1920. Look at that lumber versus new growth lumber. Like, any construction person can tell you, like, they engineered these fast growth trees because we needed fucking lumber, and like, I can't drive a nail into the wood in my house.
Oh, right.
Whereas that shit is like balsa wood sticks. The newer stuff is like way, way different. And so, yeah, I mean, it does make changes. Now, did we need those changes? Yeah, we wouldn't have houses. Mm-hmm. We had to figure out a way to house the populace, and it gets the job done. But,
yeah.
Is it the same? No. Is it bad? Inherently, no. I mean, you're still, an apple's better than a Twinkie.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. What about you, Mike? I mean, obviously you work with nutrition with clients and stuff.
Yeah.
Concerns or opinions?
I spent ton of time when I was doing the flex diet, start looking into this because I was like, okay, if it is true, would that be an argument that, even if you have a limited income, should you be spending more money on organic or looking for those things? Obviously, there's ways around it, like, shop locally, go to your farmer's market, that kind of stuff. And I found a whole bunch of historical stuff, the use of NPK fertilizers and, the theoretical drop of micronutrients and, so maybe some stuff with like selenium deficiencies because selenium's not in the soil and some of the, very small components. I'll have to look again now, but I couldn't find a really nice randomized controlled trial, even just a comparison trial of, hey, we went and got these conventionally grown tomatoes. Oh, and we got these organic grown tomatoes. And we just compared them to see what's going on. I mean, that seems like a relatively easy to do study in air quotes. You don't need IRB for freaking vegetables, so I don't know why it would be too hard. But again, outside of my area, I could not find anything like that at all. Again, maybe it exists and I can't find it. I'll have to go look again. So I ended up just saying, well, like Phil said, try to eat single ingredient stuff, eat from the rainbow, get different colors. At some point, a blueberry is a blueberry, right? But there might be some small differences there. And then, there's a environmental working group has a website that they call the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 16 or something like that they publish each year. So yeah, try to take the dirty dozen, maybe try to, eliminate those that might hedge your bets and, cut down on some stuff if you're on a budget. But yeah. And like you said, Lonnie, I'm also faced with the fact that, man, I've looked at, enough of nutrient analysis from the average person. And like Phil was saying, how about you just eat a vegetable to start? I'm so far down in the weeds now looking at selenium amounts and fucking broccoli when Bob hasn't eaten broccoli for the past 2 years and the most green things in his nutrition is like green colored Skittles. So
yeah, no doubt. The rainbow is Skittles, right? Not anthocyanins.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even the selenium thing can be entirely natural, soil depletion and stuff. I think that's an issue here in Ohio, if I remember reading some of the history.
Yeah.
Glaciation or something. I don't know.
Yep.
But it's a good point. Like, I imagine there's some variation. But a lot of this, I'm wary that this could go down a rabbit hole like some of these film documentaries, that just they're trying to prove a point. They're really selectively citing things. I'm sure food scientists and ag people are doing some of the stuff that we're talking about. Like Mike said, it's just not in our wheelhouse.
Right, yeah.
I haven't
equipped to possibly find it, which is probably true.
Maybe this is the front edge of a tsunami of information, and we're like, oh my God, we're really screwed. But as a nutritionist, I can't operate on the notion that there's only half as much selenium in this or that. And like we were saying, some of these trace minerals and stuff like that, people have even bigger problems. I'm not poo-pooing that. That's really important as I get older with prostate health and all that kind of stuff. Like selenium's a real thing, antioxidant. But at the same time, when Bob hasn't had broccoli, like you said, all he's doing is eating the Stouffer's lasagna. I mean, he's going to get something. I can tell you one thing I've noticed on my own diet logging is potassium. It's hard to reach 4,700 milligrams a day like they want you to eat. It's really hard. I'm like, God, I had fruits and vegetables today. Nope, not even close, mister. And so, and if you constantly eat the Stouffer's lasagna and I don't want to get sued, whatever brand.
Yeah.
and it's just rocking loaded with sodium and there's very little potassium. I'm glad potassium are some of the nutrients of interest on labels now because for the longest time it was A and C, right, and calcium and iron. And now we've got potassium on there and that can be helpful, although you want to see if you're eating enough fruits and vegetables because that's really where you're getting that, like dairy, like milk, fruits and vegetables, lots of potassium, but you're not getting it. I can almost guarantee it unless you live like Phil, I guess, and you grow it and you're eating apples off your farm, just reach up and grab one kind of thing. I know that's an idealistic vision, but
and that's also a hack if people do nutrition analysis and they don't have fancier software. Just a very rough back of the envelope is exactly what you said. See how much potassium they have, and if it's super low and magnesium is also super low, I can virtually guarantee their fruit and vegetable intake is atrocious.
Yeah. Go eat your broccoli, Bob.
Yeah.
Eat like an adult. It's one of my favorite phrases from Phil over the years. Eat like an adult.
Eat like an adult. Yeah.
Don't eat like an asshole. Is that what you said? And there's times where you have to do that, I guess, like if you're trying to get to 300 pounds. But those are very rare circumstances.
Yes.
Where you're specifically looking for how many McChickens can I wolf down?
Exactly. I would have to think with as big business as, let's say, organic farming is, like someone has thought about, like, oh, we should test our tomato against their tomato.
Exactly, yeah.
And if it tested much better, like that would be used instantly as a marketing point.
Yeah.
Like somebody's fucking done it. So. It's been done. Like this is not something we just thought of, and they're like, God, why didn't we think of that?
Right.
So but
nutrient content claims are real, FDA regulated real thing, and you're right. If it had 20% more potassium in the tomatoes, you bet your ass they're going to be having that somehow next to our brand, a little sign or something. I don't know.
Just looking it up here, there's a deal out of UC Davis. Tomato study points to organic pros and cons on 4 farms. They tested commercially grown tomatoes versus organically produced. The organically produced tomatoes were higher in sugars and soluble solids, consistency, and acidity, all of which are desirable attributes in tomatoes. The organically grown tomatoes were lower, however, in red color, vitamin C, and certain healthful compounds known as phenolics. So...
yeah, I imagine this is going to be a case-by-case or crop-by-crop kind of deal. The term nutrient collapse, I don't like that. That's, again, it sounds like a bad – this is my total bias, right? But that sounds like a bad documentary that we're going to go off the deep end with people trying to – all these types of documentary, forks over knives kinds of things. There's a real risk of this, knowing, again, I think my take-home message for listeners would be – agricultural science is real. It's a real field. Go look for that or ask people at your local university if there's an ag department, or I don't know, browse for agricultural science and all this and consider the source. Not that this article doesn't have bad sources. I mean, it's literally from a scientific website from chemistryworld.com, but it's just an interesting topic. And that's why I wanted to ask Jarrell if he's ever had any kind of concerns about this, or are the nutrients in food is just take it at face value and not worry about it because it's sort of beyond your control, or how do you look at that?
I mean, I concur with just Phil and Mike on this it's like if apples were my problem, whether they were, the right nutrients in apples were my issue with clients, then I wouldn't have any issues. So I mean, it's just more of it's hard to say, because if someone was eating something so consistently and then let's say over 20 years or something, you kind of notice some maybe drawbacks somehow. Like that would be more along the lines of what I would like notice and see and be able to speak to. But it's really hard for me to speak to that because like veggies, fruits are not the average issue that I have with clients. If the nutrients in pizza somehow change, then yeah, I'll be ready for that study when it comes out.
Chicken finger nutrient study.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the fats are lowered, protein is higher, and that's what I'm waiting for. Chicken nuggets or something.
If it's different per item, like Phil, you said tomatoes. Like tomatoes seem to be a massive range. I remember Jody bought some tomatoes from the local, we'll say Walmart store. We brought them home. We're like, guys, it's great. Look at how much money we saved. And they were hideous. I'm like, I don't care how much money we saved on these damn tomatoes. $2 or $3 is just not worth it.
Yeah, they're like
But
red
yet,
water balls. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But yet broccoli, I don't notice that much of a
Yeah.
difference between it or pineapple. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a individual thing too. Who knows?
Yeah. It very well could be. Yeah. Because
It's an
tomatoes,
interesting.
well, and then there's 700 kinds of tomatoes, and they all
Oh,
taste
yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It's an interesting concept that is technology
Oh, yeah.
or over farming actually changing what we take for granted, I guess. So
well,
I'll have to look.
push back against, at least recently, like there was a lot of push towards free range, organic meat, blah blah blah, and which is great. I mean, if you can afford $58 a pound,
If you can afford it.
Yeah.
there's lots of pushback coming now. It's like, just get your fucking meat. Get the one you can afford.
Mhm.
And it's like, it's better. And I think that's the resounding theme here is like Jarrell and Mike and you said, I mean, if like worrying about which tomato is step 47 on fixing your diet.
Yeah.
You're eating like an asshole. Like, you don't need to worry about that. Let's change a habit and get a bag of frozen broccoli and some tomato sauce. Good Lord, whatever. Find something with a few ingredients and let's eat that first.
And Phil, even this is a sad commentary, but even the pizza that Gerald was talking about, with fortification and enrichment laws in the U.S., they're still going to replace all the wheat, all the flours got B vitamins, and put back in because they stripped it. It's not exactly whole grain most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but enrichment and fortification, we're trying to put some of that stuff back. And honestly, that's got its own pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if I want iron enriched everything. I'm a man.
Yeah.
I already have plenty of that, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting topic, though. So I appreciate Dave sending that stuff. He's a very science-minded guy. Oh, and what he didn't say was, he says, all the best for the new year. I'm loving the Iron Radio now that it's slightly more directed at me or any other 64-year-old with a history of lifting. I sent him back. I just said, you're kind of the new target audience. As we age, we're going to naturally talk about things that are, more middle-aged and even beyond kind of things. But anyway, all right. That's going to be it for the news. Do you guys have anything else before break?
Nope.
All right, let's go to break and we'll come back and we're going to talk about looking back and looking forward. Phil had mentioned that last week, so that's our topic. Hey, everybody. Iron Radio is back and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
Okay, guys, we are back, and we're going to, like Lonnie said, we're going to look back at, the trends that we saw happen in the last year, and potentially the trends that we think are coming ahead. So, I don't know. The one thing I'm going to start it with is, just because it's fresh on my mind, high school strength coaches suck. And I think they're still going to suck in 2024. It's still, like, now that I'm more involved in athletics, like, the disconnect at the high school level, at least here locally in this state, and I've heard better things in other states, like, when are schools going to get on board? And, like, just because a dude is the football coach doesn't mean he should be the strength coach. And that's generally what happens.
It is.
Also maybe the history teacher.
Yeah, well, it very well could be. And it's like the good schools I'm seeing now, and we've got like 2 in the area around here within 100 miles that I know of that actually have a dedicated strength coach. And holy shit, the kids are doing well.
Shocker.
I just don't see it. Like, for instance, I got a call last night, and it's my daughter, so I can call her out, or her coach out. They have a big meet today. So she had to drive, and she's staying out of town because it's like a 4-hour drive away. They have a big wrestling meet today where if anybody's familiar with wrestling, you might wrestle 2 times, you might wrestle 10 times. And she got there at like 8 o'clock last night. Okay, we made it to the hotel. Now we're going to go do power hour.
What?
You're going to go through this fucking CrossFit-like thing for an hour. I was like, you wrestle tomorrow. What are you doing? And this is a normal thing for them. And it's
no.
God damn it, that's the worst thing you can do. I was like, you need to say you're sick or something. And I just don't get it. Like, they're missing even the most simple aspects of, like, strength and conditioning is what pisses me off the most. It's like, that's fine. Don't get somebody totally competent, but my God, they need a brain. The worst thing you can do night before a big competition is, let's go train your asses off and make you tired. That'll help, that'll help tomorrow.
And wreck your sleep if it's late at night, too.
Yeah, and it's like, come on, man. I mean, 24 hours out, 12 hours out. Like, the best thing you can do at that point, you are not going to get stronger. You're not going to get better. You're not going to likely get more technically sound. Holy crap, just rest.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
I
wonder, or is she thinking? Like, what's the hopeful outcome? I would love to ask the coach, what do you hope to get out of that? Just curious, given human body and the time for adaptations and training results, what are you hoping for here?
You said all adaptations, time.
That's a big word.
Hell no, they ain't thinking about none of that.
They're not. The only thing I can get
mental toughness. Was it tough?
That's exactly what it is. It's some old school thing. It's just like when every freaking high school in the nation started doing what Nebraska was football team was doing when they were all on drugs. It's some hard ass school used to do this. Like Iowa probably used to do this with their wrestlers 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And they don't do it now, but that's what it's still stuck on to. Well, Iowa did it back in 1982, and they were good. And they didn't know any better.
Tradition. When I worked with collegiate teams, I remember, two things. To Drill's point, once the strength coach said, Lonnie, don't say glycogen. They don't care. They don't know what that is. But the other was the tradition. Like, they just did it, like you said, because they always did it. I'm like, why are you guys eating the pregame meal? It's always chicken and pasta. Always, the football team in this case. And it's always like 4.5 hours before the event. I'm like, well, from a nutritional standpoint, that's just kind of some other time. I don't know what you're really going to accomplish, because the guys are getting on the field. They hadn't eaten for 4.5 hours. Maybe some people want a little snack in the locker room or something. I don't know. But tradition, there is no why other than we've always done it this way.
Is just cost, or do you think it's awareness?
Well,
all the above.
Yeah.
I would just say, there are some schools that have a philosophy of at least here, a couple of them, where there's a strength coach, and that's like, they do the, weightlifting and kind of the PE type stuff. So a better dedication to a physical education department. That's not just like who's got the free time or whatever.
Right.
As opposed to like really dedicated physical aspect of your school, like physical education aspect of the school. Which honestly, if I was going to reform it personally, what I would aim to do is like the strength coach, and maybe it would ideally be someone from the science department for like nutrition, but you would have a physical education staff almost, and you would be committed to it not only for the kids like health and education there, but also for their grades. Like almost anytime we do this with kids with like physical activity or training or anything, it's like the grades improve. So like a dedication to that is a dedication to education, which I feel like is probably the biggest gap.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to what we just talked about, tradition. Like it's just been that way for so long that whoever gets hired as the football coach expects to be that. And at that level, they want it. They want that power. Like, I've met high school football coaches like, I don't need a strength coach. That's me. Well, you're the football coach. Do you have time for this? Well, that's my job. I'm not giving that up. And you're the only level that does this. Go to college. Go to, like, the coaches at higher levels are smart enough to know they don't have the time, the bandwidth, or the smarts to do it all.
Right. You know? No, that's right. You know, that was my selling point. Whenever I would go to a new university, I'd reach out to the strength coach, usually like the head football coach and his strength coach. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, okay, you want to build new skills and abilities. That's you as a coach, right? But fuel and building blocks, that's going to be me. Because that's outside of your wheelhouse, you know? And so it's amazing to me that a lot of universities, they'll hire coaches, or even bigger universities, a whole strength staff and not a sports nutritionist oftentimes. Not all. Yeah. So you're only spending about 10% of your day, even if you train for 2.5 hours, 10% of your time actually training and applying the stimulus. But the other 90% of your training day is left to the athletes, and they don't know how to eat, or maybe they, you know, don't have access to grocers or whatever it might be. So, yeah, dividing up the skills, like you were saying, even if a coach doesn't want to admit that he's ignorant, it's just it's a bandwidth issue. Like, you don't have time for that, man. Let me do this. I'll be the support staff. So all that, you know, stimulus that you're applying has the fuel and the building blocks to actually create the bodies that you want, you know. It's not like nutrition is going to do much for the skill acquisition. You know what I mean? But like when a coach says, hey, Lonnie, I can only recruit 220-pound linemen. Can you make them 250? Well, yeah, give me a couple of years, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. You know, that
I can tell you this, though. The job that I would not want would be the nutritionist.
Oh.
For elite athletes. Good luck. Good luck.
I've lived it.
Like, they'll all train. They'll all train their asses off. If I light rings on fire and tell them to jump through it and they'll be a better athlete, they'll do it. If I tell them to eat broccoli, fuck you.
Yeah.
I created something called the basic foods list, and some of it was fast food. It was real simple things like, you know, if you can afford it, you know, get Chipotle instead of Taco Bell, you know, stuff like that. It was, you're right though. I had another strength coach say, Lonnie, unless, like, barely waste your breath. And Mike knows this. It's like pro bono work in the consulting industry, right? We all know this. You can do just a very little bit, and then they have to prove themselves on some level, right? That they're going to be part of this process. Or like what my wife does with counseling. She can talk till she's blue in the face. They have to provide effort of their own. They're making the change, not you. And there was one guy in particular, I remember, Tim, the strength coach, huge bodybuilder guy. He's like, Lonnie, and unless that guy, he's nodding and he's looking at you, it's going out the other ear. Like, he doesn't have the discipline to do anything that you're going to tell him. So make him step up, give him a simple habit or task, like get some protein before or after you lift, bud. You know, it's provided. It's literally provided. Yeah. And if he doesn't do that, write him off. Yeah. Write him off.
Yeah. So most elite athletes eat like shit. They just do. So,
yeah, the phrase of the higher level athletes or even college athletes I use is just give them the most simple task. And if they complain that's too simple, I'm like, all right, show me. Do this for 5 days in a row.
Right.
Take a picture, document it somehow. If this is so easy, this should not be any problem for you. And then we'll get more complicated. Because early on, I just kind of took them at face value and started making stuff more complicated. And that was a disaster.
I know. I hear you. Well, I know we're limited for time. I wanted to talk about something else, look back and look forward, unless you guys have a burning last comment.
Go for it.
Nope.
And I know this affected Mike recently. In 2023, unless you lived under a rock, you know that AI, this was the year of AI this past year. So artificial intelligence was in everything, and you're starting to see it. And I predict that this is going to get incorporated into, you know, I mentioned MyFitnessPal, like training apps and diet apps, especially the training stuff, because it'll comb the internet and it'll give you advice. Oh, damn. Or even nutrition types of advice. And I wanted to have Mike maybe tell the story. You sent around the thing about, it was a protein myth, zombie myth. You said they wouldn't die. And AI drug it back up because it's online from bad sources, right? The AI dredged it up and made it part of its little paragraph, right?
Yeah. So I played around enough with AI, especially with my more fitness business clients and stuff through the Flex Diet mentorship. Because I wanted to see, is it useful? It's not going away, so I probably should figure out how to incorporate it, etc. And what I realized is, because it's aggregating stuff from the internet, a lot of times when you fact checked articles that it writes, and some of the articles it writes can actually sound pretty good.
Yeah.
But the accuracy is very suspect a lot of times. I've had it make up references that sound real but are not real. And so knowing this, I did a thing where I said, okay, I found a way to limit it only to one PDF. So I was doing an article on the 100 grams of protein that I sent to T Nation. And within that, I'll tell it, okay, then go back and cite where this came from. So now I can cross-check the AI, and I can also have it scan the whole document, make sure I didn't miss anything. And so as I'm doing this, all of a sudden it spits out this thing that says, oh, and high-protein diets are known to destroy your kidneys, blah, 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 blah. I'm looking, I'm like, ugh. I've read this study 2 or 3 times. I know the researchers. I know the lab. I know that wasn't in there. And I asked it, and I said, show me where this is from in this PDF. And it's like, oh, no, it's not in this PDF. This is a known fact. And I was like, oh, my God. So I'm trying to do my best to limit it to one peer-reviewed study, and it thinks that it's doing that, and it's still pulling shit from the internet.
Because it's everywhere, right? I don't know if most consumers realize that a lot of the AI stuff, and Mike, you're the engineer, but like the machine is not deducing certain things. It's not coming up with this. It's just reading humans' shit on the internet, and a lot of it is in fact that, right? So it sees it so many times, like the protein hurts healthy kidneys. It sees that so many times, it says, well, known fact. It's logical, but it's based on a fallacy, right?
Crap in, crap out.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And that's the same problem we've talked about. It's the problem we've talked about for the last 15 years multiplied many times. Because there is great information on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
But even if we're optimistic, 50% of it's great information. Even if we're being super optimistic. And this AI is pulling from 100% of that information.
That's right. All of it.
So that's where the problem comes in. The human mind, we hope, has a BS filter that AI just doesn't have right now. It's just pulling, like you said, the kidney issue. We've seen that 8 million times. So that's now fact to me. You know? So.
And Mike said something that makes a lot of sense too, which is it writes in a persuasive way. So it reads well. And
it does actually read pretty damn well.
And it's BS, right? Yeah. It's like, wait, that fact, I just saw a meme, and we've all seen that. Research is reading 35 papers basically so you can come up with 2 sentences in your paper. You know what I mean? And so there's a huge amount of judgment involved, and it does until AI gets better at judging good from bad information. I mean, look at all the stuff on YouTube, all the controversies about, you know, these are good sources of information. These are risky sources. It's like, I feel like there's a little bit more to it than that. You know, this independent media source is actually doing stuff that might be against some corporate talking point, and so you're going to label that bad. So there's some, not some, like you said, Phil, there's a BS filter. There's a lot of judgment involved. And I think when you do AI stuff, I mean, I think about what all of you guys do, but I mean, Jarrell, you have a facility, for God's sake. Imagine somebody just saying, no, I'm going to change my training, you know, that you set up for me because my app says so. My Get Swole app says so.
Well, 2000.
Yep.
And I don't know what you say to that. You know what I mean? Except like, well, you're paying me, so I have to be number one. Sorry. Don't modify what I'm telling you or something. I don't know.
I was just going to say some of that's just the front end, we'll call it sales process, and like building that trust. Because, you know, if you can get there with your clients, they'll tend to ask questions and like trust the process way more. But kind of the shallow clients are the ones that you'd have to worry about, who are changing everything. But chances are, if they're doing that, they're going to be, they'll fail the AI program and your program. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I was just going to say that even in the future when you can use AI to limit, there's plugins you can use the ChatGPT for to limit it to PubMed, etc. If you're still not trained on how to do formal research, you are going to deviate to what the easiest thing is. So you're like, oh, I'm a smart monkey. I'm going to limit it to just, use references only from PubMed and create this essay. Well, we all know there's stuff that's peer reviewed on PubMed. There's different qualities of studies. There's different contexts. But if you are not trained in those areas, you don't know those things exist or how to do that process. You're just going to skip over it because you can type in a few characters and get something that, looks pretty good, has real references, probably would pass the sniff test to most people. Where my bias is now using AI to make the old school kind of process I would do easier and faster, not necessarily to create the end product. So I'll use like Elicit or something like that to pull multiple studies that I couldn't find, look at the methods of each section, check the population. So I use it more in a process to cross-check what I was kind of already doing before. But again, you're back to there's an actual human in the loop that's checking on these things to see what the quality of the stuff you're sticking into it is.
Yeah. I think for ideas as well, like the Nutrition Radio podcast that I was experimenting with this past year, I would do stuff like write me a 10-minute script on XYZ, like something very specific, like micronutrients and fitness. And then sometimes it would spit out something I'm like, oh, that's a good idea, and then I would have to go fact check it and rewrite it though. Right. And that's where we are. I don't know how it's ever going to get, like you said, garbage in, garbage out to the point where it has that level of nuance. Like the problem with most studies, if they're not as good, is they've overlooked a control variable or they've overconcluded, right? When I review papers, that's two things I look for all the time. And I think that's what AI would do. It would accept these over conclusions, knowing that science is so reductionist and it answers a very tiny comparison. Like we just talked about the colors of light. That's something that AI might end up doing what you just said with like the zombie myth about protein hurting healthy kidneys. Oh, well, screen reddeners, therefore, don't work. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Only going to get worse. It's going to be, and then the logical conclusion of all of it is like how much, like fast forward 5 to 10 years, right? So people in fitness want to put out content. Now they can create content in mere seconds.
Yes. Oh my God.
And then you have all a flood of AI generated content on the internet that AI is using AI generate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Perpetual circle of a disaster, right? Because now there's more, and it's a known fact.
Right.
Well, that's the problem. I think I don't know enough about AI, but I think it's reading information as fact, like information written down, fact. And it just, I don't know if you could teach it to think. You know what I'm saying? Is this really fact, or am I reading a bunch of crap? Like if you wrote something or Joe Schmo wrote something about the same thing, how will it discern who's telling the truth? Right. Or is it just eating information and all information is fact? Like how can you give it a logical mind? I don't know.
Well, and if what they program in, again with the garbage in, garbage out, if they program in trusted sources are like Monsanto and Pfizer and
yes, that's the
Kellogg's
and there's
or
the
whatever.
Other problem.
Right. Then the BS filter in a human is going to be like, oh, is there a corporate influence there? That's the
other thing we're getting at. I think the only way to do it is the AI, no matter what, will have to have some kind of human influence. And then that human is inherently flawed because we all are and has bias. So who's going to tell it? No, that's not fact. Spit that out. Like, who is that? And where's the money? Where's your money coming from? So there's the problem. I mean, we're all inherently flawed, and which, of course, if we make something, we made AI. That means it's inherently flawed some way too. Like, I don't know if we'll ever hit perfect with anything. So
I do think it's going to get better looking forward.
Well, yeah, of course.
But that's almost more dangerous because of what Mike said. Because then the internet explodes with AI generated content, I don't even think most people realize how many bots are on Twitter, like how many tweets or excretions or whatever they're called now, or even a person. You know, and so this explodes and it just kind of goes, and you've seen those AI art programs and stuff, how it just keeps reiterating and it's like this fractal thing that just keeps expanding. That's going to happen with information on the internet. Oh, yeah. But what about actual data collection, an actual experiment, observe, record what happened? I mean, that's why I like SpaceX, totally different field, but people unceremoniously kind of say, oh, they go fast and break things. Well, rapid iteration, I know Mike and I agree with this. Fail early, fail forward. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
But you've got to actually do it with experiments and interrogate nature. You can't just keep recycling stuff. And that's kind of what AI, is doing. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that in research now they're making research faster and cheaper because half of the control group they're suggesting is what I've read most recently can be fake, can be synthetic control subjects. So like if you're looking at, like, let's say diabetes, and the progression of diabetes, you've got a dozen people in your control group, not your intervention group, but at least the control. You can predict with a very high degree of certainty how their diabetes is going to progress, especially because you have the local cohort and you have what's known online in peer-reviewed research. And anyway, they're trying to do that kind of stuff with it. So it's going to change a lot of things. And it is going to get better. I just hope it doesn't become more seductive, but not concomitantly better in quality, because then it's going to really be a problem. It's like, this is a really good argument. It's like, yeah, it's based on bullcrap. That study was never replicated. Yeah.
Which you're back to what Phil said, and I know you spend a lot of time doing this, Lonnie, too, is that an article that has references and disclosures of at least funding in it. So you can look, and if you do disagree, you can go look to see, what study did they pull it? Oh, they pulled it from this study. Oh, okay. Oh, they have independent funding, or they were funded by the corn industry or whatever. So again, you're back to present the data as it is, try to give them as complete picture as possible. And then each person can go through and try to make their own assessment, as opposed to, and opinion pieces and stuff like that are fine. Then it's just somebody's opinion, and at least it's their opinion. But if you're trying to demonstrate and make a logical argument based on data, then, shocker, you should cite your data, your funding sources, so each person can kind of make their own decision based on what you actually put out.
I want to say one last thing before we wrap up, and that's, I don't know, Phil or Mike, which one of you guys said this. Social media, all people want is hits, and they want it now. It's massively the overriding pinnacle of what they're after, not quality of evidence. Even if they knew better, they would still crank out content. And then you don't just have an AI doing it. You've got a person behind it, especially if it just makes up a bunch of stuff that's right up there, flawed, to Phil's point, like that's right up their alley and their biases and everything else. But that's going to be my biggest concern is moving forward from Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or whatever it is, Facebook, that they are now given unlimited BS, right? And they're going to use it. Do you think they're not going to use it if it means making money or getting clicks? Hell yes, they're going to use that stuff. They're not going to be like Mike or I just talking about, like, when I go through a fact check and I know, Stu Phillips, his lab never, it's not like that. They're just going to use it. So yeah, the internet has, for all of its good, it's done. I don't know. Yeah. It's going to be very dangerous moving forward, because now all these guys, at least we had the barrier before with even when there was no editors for the past 15 years, at least there was the effort that it took to write it this afternoon. Yeah. And now that's gone. So there's no editors, there's no gatekeeper, and the content is created fresh on the fly, no matter how wrong it is. And they're going to use it. That's going to be my concern. And that's watch the fitness world, because fitness people are eager and they're so open-minded, their brain falls out sometimes. So they're going to be willing to listen to this stuff, and it could become an explosion of misinformation, conflict of interest.
Yeah, my only hope with that is that it ironically gets to the point where it's so bad that people will fall back and hopefully follow people who are, doing the research, training people, like actually performing the tasks that they said, because they can't necessarily trust any other information that's coming out. Right. So hopefully it'll push people to follow a real person as opposed to, IG influencer 465 that has really cool posts. It's like, that person's never trained a person in their entire life. They've never conducted a single research study.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll push people back to the people actually in the field doing the work. At least that's my hope.
I hope so. It's kind of to Drell's point, though, that, when they're like, well, it's just badass. What do you mean? Don't say that. They don't know what's quality, and they're going to be taken in by, the fake AI generated person is scantily clad and, spewing nonsense. That's going to get more views or more clicks or whatever, generate more money than the high quality, person with authenticity. That's my concern.
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of faith in humanity too. In that these people would take the time to research who's real.
Yeah.
What are the chances of that? The average person, when they're searching for something, like if I have a question and I search for it, usually 99% of the time you already have an answer in your head you're looking to find. And it's easy to find that answer, on the internet. Like if I fucking think the world is flat, I can go find lots of evidence that it is.
Oh, confirmation bias.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to find that. And most people do. Like I would say 90% of the people that come up to me with a question about training have an answer in their head. They're not looking for my real answer. They're looking for me to enforce the one they already have. And then they get pissed off because I don't. I was like, you didn't want me to really answer it. You wanted me to tell you what you wanted to hear.
Don't ask Phil Stevens if you want sugar coating.
I can't get you jacked in 6 weeks.
Right.
So
we've all had that at conferences. Like somebody will come up and they'll ask me, like, what do I think of high carb or keto or whatever? And they're just looking for usually confirmation. So a lot of times if I don't know the person, I'll be like, well, what has been your experience with it? And they're like, oh, I did this and it changed my life. And I'm like, hey, if it's working, cool. Like, go with it, man. Like, you know.
Yeah. Ball back in his court. Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
So,
all right.
All right, guys. Well, that was fun. Until next week.
Right on. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.